If you don't know ASMR, it stands for Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response. And if you don't know what that means either, ASMR is basically people speaking quietly into specialised microphones to aid relaxation and a sensation that people call the tingles. An early example of the phenomenon would be Bob Ross's show The Joy of Painting, in which the soft-spoken voice he uses while painting and encouraging the audience to paint along makes the show incredibly relaxing and kind of intimate, and has earned it a strong cult status today. But ASMR itself goes further than just speaking softly, because it tries firstly to bring about an almost meditative, living in the present sort of state by focusing the viewer's attention on simple, ordinary objects and environments and the sounds they produce. You watch the videos with headphones and your senses are focused solely on these simple, calm noises which, as I've said, are not only relaxing but produce a tingling sensation around the head for a lot of people. I myself don't get the tingling sensation, so I don't really watch ASMR. However, I'm making this video because I do find it interesting to see all the creative things that can be done with it. Because there's lots already that takes ASMR beyond just someone whispering into a mic or tapping fingers on bowls to test out different triggers for the audience, you know. For one, there's channels like ASMR Rooms or Miracle Forest that create a setting to put you in with all its sounds, so you can whack on some headphones, full screen the video and feel like you're in Hagrid's hut or Sherlock's apartment or at the end of a road under the low hum of a motel sign. Then there's ASMR walk channels such as Dave's Walks, who lets me use his footage on some of my videos, so please check out his channel, he's been great. In videos like those you get to walk through the countryside and by lakes, and there's other channels where you get to walk through busy Japanese streets and things. And then there's also the ASMR that incorporates roleplay to varying degrees of quality. For most, it's quite simple roleplay for specific needs, such as someone calming a person down after a panic attack, or soothing someone with PTSD, maybe performing magical healing rituals. Basically, there's about as many different types of roleplay videos in ASMR as you can imagine, and some of them don't seem great, but the ones I'm interested in talking about are the ones where the roleplay expands into pretty elaborate stories. Because like I said, I don't really watch ASMR, I just find it interesting to think about how the art form could develop when done at its best, because the intimate feel of sitting one-to-one with someone in that way, and the sensory setup and how it draws in all your attention, it seems like it could be a great way to tell certain types of stories. Let me take the example of a video by Goodnight I was told about, called Stay at the Cozy Babblebrook Inn, in which your character as the viewer is a traveller who's walked through the night and stumbled upon this inn for shelter, and she's one of the barmaids who work there, who sets you up with food and a drink and basically just tells you about the surrounding area. That's it, you know, she shows you a map and talks about the surrounding world and makes you feel like you're in a pub having this conversation with someone. Which is simple and relaxing, but it's also a very interesting way of world building, isn't it? Because as far as I understand, she's done this as a series, and there are more videos from the Babblebrook Inn and things, or other surrounding locations that expands this world and the story about the people there and their customs and all these sort of things. That's not really something I've ever seen before on YouTube. Possibly because I don't watch these kind of videos, but you know, it's interesting because exposition is normally the boring bit of any story, and yet here she's found a way to make that the main enjoyment and to make it interesting. It's the thing you want to know more about here, whereas the story is just you in a pub talking to someone, basically. And I just wonder how far you could take this format. I doubt Goodnight Moon is the originator of it. I don't know much about this stuff, you know, I'm not the target audience, I don't get the tingles, but I had a look around and found other similar examples, such as a series called Shiki by Escape Reality, in which you've been attacked by vampires and she stumbles upon you and tries to ingratiate you into the vampire community, basically. But that's the same sort of world building setup, where there's this person giving you exposition about the world as though it's a life you're now trapped in and have to come to terms with being a part of. So there's better examples out there I probably don't know about, you know, let me know in the comments if you do know some. I just think it's interesting, because ASMR is still a relatively new form and it seems to come in varying levels of quality. You know, think about how basic films were in the early days of cameras, or how basic games were. Think how far this format could go, because there's lots of people out there who can invent wonderful, fascinating worlds, yet aren't able or don't have a great way to tell them and lead their readers through them. Tolkien, perhaps, is one example with his book The Silmarillion. You know, it's not a book I've ever read, nor intend to read, because it looks like a boring as hell history account of the world of Middle-earth, but the world building in it must be incredible. However, the story doesn't look particularly engaging, so imagine if Tolkien was around now and he could have told the Silmarillion in an ASMR form, which is ridiculous to think about in one sense, but I bet it would have worked, you know? I don't just mean like reading the Silmarillion as it is, but explaining all sorts of the history in the sort of way you would if you were telling it to someone down the pub, you know, with all the odd tangents and jokes and poking fun at things, you know, and odd bits of narrative character. And maybe you yourself travel to other places beyond a pub and see some of the locations and hear more stuff from other characters, and you know, maybe there's slight moments of drama involved in what you're doing, but it's all used to tell the vast world-building story of the Silmarillion. That would be immense. And then what else could you do with the format? You know, imagine murder mysteries told this way, where a sergeant leads you round the crime scene and then you go to other places and interview suspects and all sorts. So now not only are you learning about the world, but you're trying to look out for clues and judge which of the storytellers are lying. I don't think any other format is set up as well to do that kind of thing. You know, not even video games are ideal for murder mysteries, because sitting still, just listening to people talk for too long would be bloody boring in a video game. Here, however, it would be incredibly engaging just to sit and listen to a person talk, so you could do that sort of thing. And imagine if the story could branch in different directions depending on the choices you're able to make. You know, you could do that on YouTube either through links to different later videos depending on your choices, or through the ways, you know, pressing number keys jumps the video on to later points. Maybe your choices are answered by pressing one of the number keys, which will then jump you to a specific scene that follows on from your decision, kind of thing. Look, I can't pretend this is the most thought-provoking video as far as mine go. You know, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're just interesting, sincere little thoughts I'm having as I go about things. I don't think there's any great meaning to draw from this video beyond, oh, that'd be a cool idea. But all the same, it would be a cool idea. And I think this is the side of creativity that's not often talked about enough, you know, making use of the format. Like, I write stories because I'm better at writing than I am drawing or making music or anything else. That's kind of it. I have my ideas and then I tell them as novels or short stories or whatever. I rarely stop to think, would it be more interesting to tell this story in another format? Or even, how can I change the rules of this format? How can I use the limitations to my advantage? If novels have to be told on bits of paper you flick through, what can be done to make that more interesting? Kind of thing. Because boundaries don't just restrict creativity, as they're often said to do. They can kind of ignite it, like solving a puzzle. It becomes fun to imagine ways to work around the restrictions imposed on you. So, if the restriction of ASMR is that the conversations are always technically one way because the audience can't really respond, and the restrictions that it has to be able to fit into a YouTube video, and it has to create a sensory stimulations? I don't know. But if those are restrictions, you can then start to think, well, what could I do to give the audience a bit more involvement? What could I do to fit sensory stimuli into this story even more? Or even to think about breaking those rules. You know, what if I didn't do it in a YouTube video? Is there some other technology that would suit this better? You know, maybe VR or something. And then suddenly just having those boundaries sparks ideas you'd have never thought about otherwise. You know, it makes it feel fun to imagine, which is exactly what it should be. The more fun you have imagining this idea, the more fun your audience will have when they're being invited into the world you've imagined. I think I've lost the thread of what I was saying there. And like I said, it's not the most profound of videos, this one. But I do find it interesting to think about. seeing any art form in its early stages and wondering where it could go. People would have once asked the same questions about films and games. How can we make the best use of this art form to do things other forms couldn't do? And those questions led to a lot of great innovations. I don't know what I'll title this video. Maybe I'll call it "Is ASMR an art form?" or something. In which case, I'd say yes it is. I'd say anything can be an art form if you're able to express something meaningful or do something imaginative with it. The question is only, will people want to? If all people really need of ASMR is something to relax and give them the tingles, will creators bother with the huge effort of creating something more expansive? Most of them, no, probably not. It will probably be as it is now. However, from videos like the Goodnight Moon and Escape Reality ones I've mentioned, they suggest that some creators might go that route of doing more. You know, there are a lot of creative people who enjoy pushing the boundaries and to create increasingly imaginative or meaningful work simply for the fun of it, simply for their own journey. So some of them will, in my eyes. Will that journey go far enough to include Silmarillion style epics or immersive murder mysteries in ASMR form? I don't know. We'll have to wait another 10 or 20 years to see what happens. ASMR is interesting because it's so strange and different to anything else, and even if it's not really my thing, I still find that interesting as an idea. But yeah, sorry if this video hasn't been a great one. It's partly because I'm editing an hour-long video. I'm doing the second Spirited Away episode I'm working on, so that's taking up the majority of my time, and it's going to take a while, so I have to do some smaller things in the meantime, this being one of them. But if you still enjoyed it, give it a like. If you have any thoughts, any stuff you know more about me to do with ASMR, let me know in the comments, and otherwise, hopefully see you next time.